Hello, everybody. Welcome to another interview for the Dialogue of Americas. It's my great pleasure to be joined by Christina, and she's going to introduce herself in a minute. And I had the pleasure to come across her wonderful report and paper called The State of Content Moderation for the LGBTIQA plus community and the role of the EU Digital Service Act, right, which is a legislation in EU currently under discussion, and Christina can tell us more about that. Hi, Christina, welcome. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, yeah, I'm Christina. I have worked extensively in the field of the digital. I basically started off with Wikipedia, and my job was in 2013 to enhance women editors in Wikipedia. That's when I started to actually deal with content moderation and also the problem around specific groups that were content moderator or hate speech or disinformation. These are content pieces. How do you deal with it and how do you involve community in it? And it's kind of was a kickoff to that I worked on basically the last nearly 10 years now. And I'm now at a point where I am an expert and I work, I'm an expert on hate speech and affected groups of hate speech. That's why I'm interested, especially in marginalized groups, because they are affected a lot more of hate speech, and they are affected on, they're affected on as well in the field of content moderation from the platforms that they serve. So this is actually what we will probably speak about. And another part is the involvement of communities that I'm very interested in. I see as a key to a good content moderation, and as a democratic tool that we need to talk about and enhance more and think about and do research. And right now I work for the oldest media research institute in Germany, and I do research on niche platforms because they have innovative approaches to these questions that I just said before, and they have not been researched at all, neither in the US, neither not here. So I want to kind of open the field more for wider diversity discussion and nuanced content moderation.
Thank you. We definitely need that. And I just want to mention, right, that you are also a lecturer and you are the deputy director for the Center for Internet and Human Rights.
Thank you.
So, and it's very interesting because I also worked with the Wikimedia community in Latin America. So I know how interesting that can be. So, based on all your experience, right, can you define for our audience, so we level the playing field, right? What is content moderation and how is that different from content curation?
Okay, for me, curation is also part of content moderation. Content moderation is a wider term to describe a rating, amplifying, hiding, dealing with any kind of content. And content for me in specific are pieces that are user generated and that are uploaded on social media platforms. So that's my focus. That's what I speak about. I speak about user generated pieces, might be written, might be audio, might be visual things that are uploaded, and then they are dealt with by the platform themselves in amplifying, hiding, supporting, enhancing, reaching wider audience through technical. This is all content moderation. So I have a wide term on it.
Sure, and it was very interesting to read your paper, right? And you bring this idea of a thoughtful content moderation, right? Which is crucial for building a healthy, safe, and inclusive internet, especially as the number of those users grow, right? Which is exponentially grow. If you see statistics in Latin America, for example, everybody has one or two cell phones, right? So what does it mean to have a thoughtful content moderation?
Okay, thoughtful content moderation. Also, I didn't say before that I work here in Germany in the field of discrimination. That's also how I dealt with hate speech. So what led me was how can we build online spaces where anti-discrimination methods work, and they just make a healthy surrounding for everyone. So here is the thoughtful content moderation is one that that community involves, and they feel they also own the space, and they're part of this normative negotiation of what stays up, what goes down, what is not allowed in this place, or what can be negotiated. And in this nuancing that I described you, thoughtful content moderation would always consider communities and the people who actually maybe created that content, maybe discussed that content, maybe are part of the room that the content was created in, like a forum or a group. So that is part of thoughtful content moderation, is to think actually of the others that are all there, that create the public space in a way, or semi-public space.
Well, that's very interesting, right? And reminds me of some proposals around focusing content moderation on perhaps community policing, or ensuring that even content moderators themselves speak the native language, right? So you have, are those elements part of that idea?
Yes, there's actually 3 systems of content moderation that you also find in the report. And these 3 systems is the industrial system, which you probably all are most known with. That's the systems that Twitter, Facebook, Google, and so on use. They have an industrial system, which means a lot of people, maybe not even in the local space, in the national space where you are, maybe not even speaking the language, deal with your contents according to a specific policy. That policy is not made with users. That policy is probably has been made by a very small elite group in the Silicon Valley that thought, now that's the community standards. And these standards also vary and change all the time, and not with user involvement. So that's an industrial part. That's a problematic part. And a thoughtful one would be something to say, okay, involved communities. You can have the Wikipedia case, which is only community-led, but only community-led platforms, you know, Carolina, also bring up their problems. Like, it's not that they are like a total non-trolling, inclusive, wonderful, healthy space. I think the Wikimedia movement really works hard on that now, giving themselves this vision to get there, but it doesn't come, it doesn't come, sorry, it's better, yeah. It doesn't come with a prize. It's not on, just don't make it community-led. It's not going to work. So I introduced this methods of nuancing, meaning that content moderators are close to community, and community can flag, you know, maybe the trusted flagger principle, and community is invited to maybe discuss pieces and to be part of this decision making, what stays up, what goes down. Now, an institutional answer we are creating in Europe now to this is this so-called courts or social media courts. I'm not so big fan, because I think we need small local decisions in the cultural context with people who know their community and who are connected. And I talked with you about these small niche platforms. I have actually examples from smaller platforms in there that come from communities. Sometimes the moderators come from the marginalized communities themselves. So they empathize, they know a lot about these people who maybe struggle, who are frustrated, who are targeted by hate speech. And I think that they do a good work in keeping these people on the platform and into a kind of normative order. And that's kind of what I think. Sorry?
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's what I think that is kind of this this thing. And these people are paid. The moderators are paid. The team is paid. Yeah, that's very important, and that's their job also to take care of that 24/7. And then you have a part of community that is involved up to their voluntary birth. And here you need to be careful in like not exploiting voluntary work or voluntary movements. I think this is also this further discussion, but it's interesting to involve them in decision making, to invite them into community gatherings. You know, the Wikipedians, they meet up, and that's a very important part. And if I find communities and I know they meet up, I think that's also a healthy sign, because they will use a different space to negotiate their conflicts.
Exactly, exactly.
Just to give you an example, yeah,
Please
I
go.
worked with Wikipedia, and my job was to do the WikiCon, the conventional meeting of the Wikipedians in Germany. Yeah, that was a thing. But when we had that event, 3 days, after that 3 days, I could tell you 4 weeks, we had a lovely time, all of us in Wikipedia. Nobody fought, everybody was happy, because a lot of these meetings could become, or the social problems, all this frustration, like the meetings really help to create a good climate for a certain while.
And trust, definitely, right? You create trust, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah, and you create also new boundaries between people that might meet online but never met. There is a lot of space of opportunities that you should use for social interaction that do create change.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And Wikipedia is a global platform, right? So there is a lot of content being generated there all the time. So there is a model there that's working, right? And you do talk about that you have found lots of inconsistencies, right? And double standards when looking mostly at these larger platforms. Can you describe some of those? And perhaps then we can jump a little bit, which is one of the focus of this report, on the impact on LGBTQ plus
Okay.
communities. Yes, please.
So I speak about inconsistency of queer trans community that actually works a lot through Instagram, because I think visual pieces are for this community very important. They're called Salty, and it's like yeah, it's an LGBT plus community, and they kind of gather in their report. They show very clearly how, I don't know what they publish. If imagine the norm of a female and male upper body in an Instagram algorithmic feed, and there's this Puritan values of not showing a female upper body, and that is absolutely suppressed or immediately categorized as escort service or as sexually explicit, and the feed, the algorithmic sorting will suppress that. Yeah, because it's kind of nothing that really is wanted by the technical sorting and pushed. So if this community publish something that maybe is not a female or a male body, first of all, the filter systems and also the sorting of the content moderation, they don't really know what is it. Is it now a female or a male body? Because that's the categories how these technical decision-making system work. So they will anyway flag it, and then it's up to the people to decide can that stay up like that or not. So that is all these very unclear borders that these people basically suffer from, because AI as it is used in Instagram is fed by a very heteronormative wide concept, and that is, as I said, also Puritan valued. It's not a non-value system, and that is actually something that should never be described. So the question is, how can you create something that allows queer communities to also be a part of Instagram without being suppressed, erased for no reason, or marked as escort if they're not. I mean, they're not all sex workers. Here you feel the stereotyping that is already happening through the sorting, and that's an example. Another example I give is of a gay trans platform to meet men, basically, that are interested in men. It's a dating platform. This platform actually has been erased by, I think, the Google Play Store various times. They never know why, because the Google Play Store changes their standards. And you can also see that to a player like Tinder, or like a very big heterosexual majority group, that of course they have a different strength to speak with people from the Google Play Store not to get removed. But once these people get removed, they never know when it will come back and how they can clarify it. They usually don't have a way to actually speak as an equal actor to the Google Play Store. And this is really specifically Google, and it's kind of a bottleneck, and it also suppresses the communities. They can't get together, which that is the internet also for enhancing, empowering, meeting similar people.
Yeah, the right to assembly, right? And
yeah, all these things will not then happen because the thing is basically then only accessible through the computer. Uh, and that's kind of very small, nuanced pieces that I give you. And another one I found the other day in TechDirt, they have all these content moderation cases, and that was from Nextdoor. That kind of they solidarity. They on Twitter they did a post, solidarity to Black Lives Matter. And after they did these posts, actually from Nextdoor, there were lots of people saying, hey, but we are Black communities and our posts have been erased. Or there was this thing that the platform itself wanted to show the solidarity, but at the same time, they do also racially stereotype and suppress specific posts on these platforms. And that shows this kind of ambivalentic feeling about marginalized groups that are not marginalized, or that are not margins. They are maybe, especially next door, that are like majority, but they don't get the same rights of visual showings. And yeah, as I said, all these technical systems, all of them lack diversity. And I don't know which one doesn't.
no, exactly, right. We had an interview with a professor here in the US, Thomas Davison, that does research on content moderation and bias toward racial bias, right? And he demonstrated exactly that, right? Like the use of some words and slangs that are natural to some communities, to Black communities and Afro-descendant communities, they end up being more taken out, right? Moderated than because they are considered slurs, right? And it's like it's different when I say queer, and it's different when LGBTQ member, right, say queer, right? They might have different connotations, and the platforms need to be able to make that difference, right? And I think then we go back to that concept of thoughtful content moderation that is really embedded in the community that the platform is moderating, as you were saying before. And I feel that all that really impacts on the ability of these communities to participate in the democratic debate, right? Which is also one of the topics of the dialogue of the Americas. So how do you see that connection playing nowadays? And if you have examples, would be great.
I mean, you said before, I wrote this basically in front of a new law that will come to power very soon and will affect really our rights as users. And what's very interesting is that the law that we are proposing is trying to to give users more rights about their data, about the way that content moderation might be wrong, that you can appeal to it and have a takedown and notice maneuver very quickly. But the question, I think, is not so individual. I think the law shows it very individual. And to say, yeah, we need better measures to take down and notice content. It doesn't solve the problems, what you said, of these communities, or of like a democratic space where we all need to kind of share with equal value what we want to reach or dispute. And so I'm more standing for these like I want to think more about how can we create ecosystems, digital ecosystems that are, you would say, healthy. I would more say sustainable for a democratic future. And that's where I also go. And I see that the user involvement is important, but that you need to, one of my answer is that community management, or you probably know from the Americas, this approach of community organizing that also through Obama got very, very popular. But I mean, he just took up this idea of community organizing. So I see people who do community organizing as keys in these debates to create good space. Like, it's not that we just provide the space and we just provide the people. We need these bridges in between to help to decide what we want to speak about, how do we want to speak about it, and like kind of what nuanced, what content is allowed and not, and to create involvement and ownership on democratic values. And these community organizer, or I called it digital street work, they basically make sure these values and the line is discussed and also surveilled. And it's an empowerment process. If a community is very strong and very, in a way, democratic, healthy, they will participate, they will discuss this themselves, but not all communities are able to do that immediately for themselves. So the idea of this community organizing is to help that and to kind of provide these spaces of empowerment, which the digital spaces are, to be part of a democratic culture, a debating culture, or a discussion culture that I see that it doesn't work with these members, making sure it's a safe space, making sure specific topics are talked about in a fair way. Discrimination doesn't just happen, it's addressed, it's questioned, why does it all happen? What can we all, each of us, you do here today to change that it's better? And do we share the value that we don't want this to happen? Hate speech or certain discrimination. Are we a space for that or not? You know, that's kind of the things that if you do it with the people, with communities, they will have the change in themselves and they will kind of explore and be owners of these democratic spaces then. But kind of, I think just space, just people and individual, it doesn't work. You need these carriers of community organizers.
Exactly. And
that's kind of my solution.
Yeah, involve more the communities, right? And it's interesting because we do see the platforms involving, for example, influencers and large groups, right? But it's interesting because those are the groups that actually generate ad revenues in a lot of ways, right? And the groups that do not generate that much ad revenue, but are still users, right? So do you see any issue there? Or and also to wrap up, how do you see the discussion in Europe going? Because that's very interesting to understand what's going on across the Atlantic. To see how that can help or hurt or inform the discussions in the Americans too.
Yeah, I think that Europe kind of wants to be the good one here now in the whole worldwide business. Say, yeah, we do it really human rights orientated, but I think that's an illusion. I mean, we have to be very critical and fair about this. So it will be interesting how far this process now will happen, like, because we are in the middle of negotiation, and it's a question of, is it more an economic mean, or is it more a social cohesion mean that we try to address? But some of these laws that are proposed are very, very good, which means you can decide what advertisement you want to see. And if you don't want to see advertisement, you can turn that off. That's kind of one of the proposals. And you can decide if you want an algorithmic sorted chronicle feed, or if you want just a feed with all these things that basically center us in human rights way and kind of take away these economical gains that are there. That's very interesting. So I think if this stays in the law, it might be very powerful. And many people in Brussels say, wow, that's a good piece and that's a step forward. I just don't know how much is left of the good intention and these examples that I described you at the end, because now it's the whole negotiation. And it will make the big platforms really pay high penalties, make sure they pay taxes, make sure they comply, make sure they put in they put a specific amount of staff to deal with content moderation, but only the big platforms. So it's also, I'm feared of this static, and I know you have the same discussion in the US with Section 230, and the question, should only big platforms be exempted or not? And I just think that we can't get away with just saying, oh, these platforms are too big, and we just regulate by size. I think we should enhance people who do good, nuanced, thoughtful community moderation. They should be in the front to say, hey, this is good examples. And then it's the question, how can we create rules from that in order to kind of positive enhance good actors. That's kind of my market idea. And like the big ones are too big, yeah, but it can't be the answer just to put a lot of responsibilities onto them and away from the state and society. It's just not going to work. I think we all have to do this together.
Yes,
So
exactly.
that's the one question, and the other, and I also think that that we have too little discussion between the ocean, as we say. Like we should be more have a transatlantic discussions, because there is so much movement in this field, and I don't see that there is so much happening. And the other question, can you just say it again? I know there was a part before.
No, it's just that how can we learn from what's happening in Europe, right? How can that help the discussions in the Americas? And then perhaps your final thoughts too.
Okay. Yeah, I really recommend you to think about what I said last. What can you penalize? What can you illegalize? So what can you enhance, empower, like show this is a good way to go? This is really something that interests me. And I know there's small platforms, especially in the LGBTQA plus, that kind of, they're like small, but they develop different algorithms. They develop a queer algorithm that is not like Instagram, and they're just in the beginning. But I think this is something that we should look into, because that is maybe an innovative and more democratic orientated way. The penalties is for me, it's not so interesting, and I don't think we should constantly punish, but more see how is social norms applied, and how can we create them all together, and what kind of technical systems can create them. And content moderation systems are these, they are kind of the key to the space and the users, and to create these spaces. So,
and it's very interesting what you're saying, because it also reminds me that a lot of users and even experts, right, they talk about the lack of transparency on how all these processes occur, right? So maybe empowering more and more the user understand better also how what is being done or what can be done, right? So that's very interesting too, in terms of empowerment through transparency.
yes, but it's I see we have in Germany a specific law already about taking down illegal content and forcing big platforms within 24 hours to take down illegal content. And I see that there's a huge lack of educational sites. That is also one thing I want to add to you, is that here the lawmakers and also the European, they just make these laws, but they never think about what it does to like everyday people who use the internet, who are maybe harassed because they're part of a minority, or they get a racial slur, and they just want to say, no, enough, I'm gonna report that, and they don't even know what rights they have, what reporting mechanisms there are, and they're not helped by. And that's also this helper structure is something that also is very important to look into, to give certain people these yeah, like too big campaigns. What is your right in the internet? How to flag? How to report? And we have this law, and yeah, the numbers are very low of people who use it. Yeah, but because nobody maybe knows it's there, and the way that the big platforms did it in the interface is also in a dark pattern way, so you don't really find it. So there's even more to say. Okay, 3-click rule. It should be in 3 clicks you can do a report. You should know what happens to you. You should know where it is. Everybody should know that. It's something very simple and very basic, but you should be able to defend yourself in seconds. And
Exactly. Transparency also on processes, on how to even get your content back online, right? You're commenting this app, right, that was taken out of Google Play, and I'm sure it's hard to put it back, and it's hard to know who to ask help from, right?
yes, and there's a lot that also the platforms themselves can do. And that's yeah, that's I think that's again a thing that we all need to do together. If you have too much flagging, you have too much work, but then you maybe need to work more with content community manager or community organizers who go into discussion and who do preventional work, that people don't get angry and flag all each other. On the midterm, investing in this kind of human resources, it's a lot more than just piling up more and more content moderation system and more people who have to decide whether this should be taken down or not. Should be a part of the community.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much, Professor. And it was an honor to meet you and also read this incredible report you wrote that it's in our bibliography here at the Dialogue for the Americas. Any final thoughts? Otherwise, thank you.
I can't hear you now.
Do you have any final thoughts or?
I'd be interesting what comes out. And Carolina, if you want, I can like write you a short piece or do a summary of my report. And I'm actually working now, maybe this is interesting, in half a year on alternative content moderation. So what could be concrete?
That's wonderful. Yes, any reports or summaries or bibliography you or our audience can recommend would be wonderful to add to our bibliography, and has core resources to really empower the discussion we are trying to have. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.
Also you, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Bye.